Welcome to Team G503. I am your host, Scott Schiller, and in this video, I'll be disassembling the front leaf springs and removing the front axle. In this video, you've got to be really careful what you're doing here because you're dealing with a bunch of heavy weight. The axle is very heavy and it has a tendency to slip out from underneath you. Make sure your frame is supported well. You're going to need some jack stands and a good jack, but follow along and we'll take the front axle off. Let's begin by removing the front wheels. Notice here on this stud you'll see an L. That stands for left-handed thread, which means the rule righty-tighty, lefty-loosey does not apply here. We'll have to turn this the actual opposite way that we would a normal bolt to remove it. These are on the driver's side. This has caused a lot of confusion in the past, including myself, and led to many a broken stud. I'm using a 1/2-inch drive socket to loosen all 5 of the lug nuts on the wheel before I lift the vehicle. Using a floor jack, lift the Jeep until the tire is just off the floor and the wheel will spin freely. Remove the 5 lug nuts now with the vehicle lifted by hand. Keep these left-handed lug nuts separate than the right-handed ones in order not to cause yourself a problem when you go to reinstall the tires in the future. Remove the tire from the axle. I have both tires off the front axle removed, and I've got jack stands located here on the bumpers. This is a secure area to put them, and I've got 2 separate jack stands ready and waiting for when I actually remove the spring and the axle from the frame. I've previously soaked the U-bolts with a penetrated catalyst in order for them to come off easily. These are usually really rusty and full of mud. As you see here, they come off pretty easily. Remove all 4 of them and the lock washers. Once the U-bolts have been removed, I can remove the shock plate from the bottom side of the spring.
Shock plate number A572.
Remove the U-bolts from the axle tube.
The front axle U-bolts are part number A575. 3 are required.
I've placed a floor jack under the axle tube and lifted just enough where I can get a separate set of floor jacks underneath the axle. I lower the axle onto the floor jack safely so it is secure and lifted away from the spring assembly. This will keep the weight of the axle off and make it easy to remove the spring from the frame.
The front spring assembly is part number A612.
On the rear side of the spring, there is a bolt with a greasable fitting. You have to first remove the cotter pin in order to remove the nut off the bolt. Using a wrench on the inside of the frame, and we'll walk around the other side here, and you can see that I'm using a socket on the other side of the frame. This will give you good leverage, and you'll be able to take the nut and bolt off pretty easily. Remove the nut until about 1/4 inch of the threads are away from the frame. Then, using a soft face mallet, simply give the bolt a tap to relieve it from the frame itself.
Greasable spring bolt, part number 348228.
Finish removing the nut from the bolt, but don't remove the bolt from the spring or the frame yet. Place your hand underneath the bottom side of the spring before you remove the bolt as shown and lower the spring safely to the floor. The U-shackles are located at the front side of the spring and are fitted with threaded bushings. One bushing will go into the actual spring assembly itself and the other through the frame. I like to use a wrench to get these started only because I'm closer in and I have less of a tendency using a socket to slip here. After I get the actual bushing loose, I will use a socket to continue to remove the actual bushing. These are long threaded and take a few minutes to take out. Once you get them loose, you can take them out by hand. Remove the lower one that is connected to the spring assembly first, and you can lower the spring assembly to the ground. Remove the top bushing now from the U-shackle, and it can be removed from the frame. Once we get it removed, I want to show you something inside here. You see your threads you've got on your bushing. If you look inside here in the frame, you will see those same threads that accept that bushing.
U-shackle, part number A513.
In a previous video, we all had a little laugh about the nail here that was used as a cotter pin to secure the shocks. So we'll go ahead and remove that. I saved one of the shocks on here just so I could show you during the disassembly of the front axle and springs how that would come out. There's your washer.
Washer, part number A227.
We'll go down to the lower side of the shock now, remove that nail as well. I got a little bit of trouble making fun of the nail thing. I guess that's quite the field mod, but anyways, it's supposed to have a cotter pin. We'll remove that. Once that's removed, we can wiggle the front shock loose and remove it from the frame and from the shock plate.
Front shock absorber, part number A6902.
The disassembly is the same as the driver's side with the exception of these two U-bolts right here. As you'll notice, there's one that's larger that goes over the casting of the differential on the axle, and there's a smaller one. Just to say again, remember the threads for the wheels on the outside of the passenger side are right-handed threads. Now you can use your jack to safely lift the axle off the jack stand, and I'm lowering them onto a pair of furniture dollies. Once the axle has been lowered to the furniture dollies, I can safely wheel it out from underneath my frame. When rolling the axle from underneath the frame, try to keep your hands on top of the axle as opposed to underneath it. I'll find a safe and clean location to store and cover the axle until I can work on it and service it. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to follow along with the progress of the 1943 Willys MB restoration, you can subscribe to us at Team G503 on YouTube. Once again, thank you to Ron Fitzpatrick and Ron Fitzpatrick Jeep Parts. Until next time, keep it safe and happy Jeeping.